In this video, we're going to take a look at a brown ink by KWZ Cappuccino. Now, as always, there's timestamps down below so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. Also, down in the description is a link to the brown ink playlist, so if you want to check out more brown inks, you can find that there. I'm an ink guy, and let's get into the first writing sample done on 90 GSM Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. We have no feather, spread, halo, sheen. We do get some decent shading throughout some of this writing. The stub, not so much, but the extra fine, that's quite a bit lighter, definitely has it. You look at quick, goes darker to lighter to darker. The goes light to dark. Brown goes dark to light. The medium, that's darker than the extra fine, not as dark as the stub, still has that shading, with brown going darker to lighter, fox going lighter to darker. The extra fine took 17 seconds to dry, and the medium took 22 seconds to dry. Now, the scrubby for both don't show very much color variation, almost none in the medium, but it's very nice in the writing. And the smear test, you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. To have a range of experience with this ink, all of the writing samples are done with a Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a medium, and a Jinhao X750 with an extra fine. Then a Visconti Medici with a broad nib was inked up, used for day, and used to take the notes for this video. The next writing sample is done on 52 GSM Tomoe River. No bleeding, no ghosting. We have no feather, spread, halo, sheen. We have little bits of shading in the extra fine where the looks a little bit darker than what's around. K looks a little darker than the rest of quick. Nothing really in the medium. The extra fine's quite a bit lighter than the stub. The medium's just a little bit lighter than the stub. The extra fine took 25 seconds to dry, while the medium took 32 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show no color variation. We're not really getting a ton there. And the smear test, I do not think you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. I agree with Vita. There's a lot to learn by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. A line of ink is put down, and then it's put in the water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see this nice light blue pushing its way up. Then we come across this brown. Now, I have a feeling that this brown is not really brown. It's the blue mixing with the orange that we see at the top. The one on the right that's let dry for 10 minutes before it's put into water, that blue has definitely started to bond with the filter paper, showing that it might be a little bit resistant. The rest of that blue, which isn't a lot of it, is pushing its way up, but there is enough to create the brown as it joins with the orange. The next writing sample is done on 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. No bleeding, no ghosting. We have no feather, spread, halo, sheen. We do see some shading, like at the very beginning of Cappuccino. You see some lighter spots, especially on that first P, but then it gets dark and really stays dark. Where the extra fine is a little bit lighter than the stub, the medium's about the same tone as the stub. The extra fine showing the shading a bit better than the medium is. Where you can really see quick is much darker than the word brown right next to it. And brown goes from a little darker to a little lighter, where fox goes lighter to darker. In the medium, you only see a couple spots that are a little lighter, like the beginning of fox or the middle of brown. The extra fine took 19 seconds to dry, while the medium took 23 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows the color variation better than the medium did, and that happened in the writing as well. Now, the smear test, you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on a page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. The smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I feel safe using it in a note-taking situation because it doesn't really seem to budge and get out of there. Water is really breaking quite a bit of this down, getting rid of most everything. The pen flush, you do see some of the white of the paper coming through. You also see some of that blue still there, like on the chromatography. Strange that we didn't see it in the water, except that it only took water to get it out of my pen. The 1/3 bleach solution, you're not going to need it, but it does completely obliterate it. The next writing sample is done on life paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. Now we have no feather, spread, halo sheen, we do see some shading. All the way through Cappuccino, it starts lighter, works its way much darker, much lighter, and very dark on the O. The extra fine's a little bit lighter than the stub, where the medium's a little darker than the stub. The extra fine shows some very nice shading in it, where brown goes darker to darker, and fox goes lighter to darker. The medium, while it is darker, it's still showing some bits of shading. You see over goes light to dark. You see fox goes dark on the bottom of the F, but then light and dark into the X, where lazy goes mid-tone to dark, much lighter. The extra fine took 16 seconds to dry, the medium took 21 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show only a tiny bit of color variation. It's much nicer in the writing. And the smear test you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average viscosity was 2.5, and the realm of normal was 2.1 to 2.9. KWZ's Cappuccino had a viscosity of 2.15, making it normal. If you're interested in how the viscosity tests are done and all of that, then there's a link to that video down in the description. Now, let's take a look at Apica CD notebooks. No bleeding, no ghosting. We have no feather, spread, halo sheen. The stub shows the shading fairly well. You see it all the way through. The extra fine shows it very nicely. The medium shows it some. You see it better in the word fox, and you do see it some in the word brown. But where the is very dark, it's still very nice. The extra fine's quite a bit lighter than the stub. The medium's a little bit darker than the stub. When the extra fine took 12 seconds to dry, the medium took 15. Now the scrubby for the extra fine shows good color variation. The medium shows none, but we got better color variation in the extra fine. And the smear test you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average dry time was 17 seconds, and the realm of normal was 13 to 21 seconds. KWZ's Cappuccino has an average dry time of 23 seconds, meaning it takes just a little bit longer than normal to dry. The last writing sample is done on Franklin Christoph paper. We have a couple of spots where it has come deep into the page, but it has not come through the paper. It's not ghosting, it's just a couple spots that it went deeper. Not something that would stop you from using the back of the page, and definitely doesn't touch the page underneath. We have no feather, spread, halo sheen. Now this is a more absorbent paper, so the shading is much less than we have seen. Fox goes lighter to darker, brown goes darker to lighter. The medium is very dark all the way through the writing. It's darker than the stub, and the extra fine is lighter than the stub. The extra fine took 10 seconds to dry, and the medium only took 11. Now the scrubby for both show almost no color variation, and we're really not getting it, and the smear test you could definitely recover if you smeared while you were writing. Instead of finding inks that look like KWZ's Cappuccino, I'd prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I decided to go with a nice orange ink by Diamine, one of my favorite oranges, Pumpkin. If you'd prefer a different complement color, then down in the description are links to those playlists. So what do I think of KWZ's Cappuccino? I like the tone, and as expected, with a good brown, it shades really well. It brings that old world feel to your writing. Like what you write is smart. Like a ridiculous ink review from YouTube. So what nib and pen are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? If you want its darkest tones, go with a very wet medium, but I like it to be a little bit lighter and to show off that shading. So I would choose a medium flow fine. I hope you got something out of this video, and in the next video, we're going to take a look at Diatramentis Document Dark Blue.